Get on your knees, old man. The entire backyard went silent. The billionaire CEO's son stood 10 feet away from Daniel Reed, smiling as nearly 50 wealthy guests watched. He was 26, a national-level black belt, and famous for humiliating anyone who dared challenge him. Daniel was 43, a single dad, a mechanic, and wearing a plain white shirt that had already been stained by grease that morning. The young man cracked his knuckles. "You heard me." Daniel looked at him calmly. Then he said something that made the laughter disappear. "You really don't want me to fight you?" The young man laughed. "Oh, I'm sorry. Should I be scared?" Daniel looked toward the little framed photograph sitting on a nearby table. It was his daughter. Then he looked back at the man. "No." He took off his watch. "I just don't want to hurt you." That was the moment the billionaire's son made the biggest mistake of his life. Because he had no idea that the quiet single dad standing in front of him had once commanded a Navy SEAL team in combat. And Daniel had spent 15 years trying to forget exactly what his body still knew how to do. The party had started as a celebration. Daniel had been invited by his boss, Mr. Harrison, to the CEO's enormous coastal mansion after repairing one of the company's executive vehicles. Daniel almost didn't come. He didn't belong among people like these. People wearing watches worth more than his truck. People talking about million-dollar deals while he worried about his daughter's college tuition. But his daughter, Emma, had convinced him. "Dad, go for once," she'd said that morning. "You work all the time." So Daniel went. He stood near the edge of the garden, holding a glass of soda while everyone else drank champagne. Then Marcus Harrison arrived. The CEO's son. Designer clothes, expensive watch, tattooed arms, and a reputation for believing money could buy him anything. He noticed Daniel almost immediately. "Who's the mechanic?" One of the guests whispered something in his ear. Marcus laughed. "That's him." Daniel ignored him, but Marcus didn't. He walked over. "You fixed my father's car?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah." Marcus looked him up and down. "Looks like my father is hiring cheaper help these days." A few people laughed. Daniel simply took another sip of his drink. Marcus stepped closer. "You know what I hate?" Daniel said nothing. "People who come to places like this and pretend they're equal to everyone." Daniel finally looked at him. "I'm not pretending anything." That answer irritated Marcus. "What did you say?" "I said I'm here because your father invited me." The crowd became uncomfortable. Marcus smiled. Then he noticed the photograph of Emma. "Your daughter?" Daniel nodded. "She must be proud." Daniel's expression changed slightly. "She is." Marcus picked up the photograph. Daniel immediately stepped forward. "Put that down." Marcus smiled. "Relax." He looked at the picture. "Cute kid." Daniel held out his hand. "Give it back." Marcus didn't. Instead, he said, "Maybe you should teach your daughter how to choose better company." The smile disappeared from Daniel's face. "Give me the picture." Marcus tossed it onto the table. "Or what?" Daniel picked it up carefully. He checked the frame. Then he looked at Marcus. "Nothing." Marcus laughed. "You're afraid." "No." Daniel put the photograph back. "I just know there's nothing to prove here." That sentence triggered Marcus's ego. He stepped forward. "You know what? I think you need to prove something." Daniel sighed. "I'm not interested." Marcus raised his voice. "I'm challenging you." Everyone turned. A woman gasped. Someone whispered, "Marcus, don't." But Marcus was already removing his jacket. He pointed at Daniel. "Black belt versus mechanic." The guests began pulling out their phones. Daniel shook his head. "No." Marcus smiled. "Why?" "Because you're angry." "I'll be fine." "You don't know what you're asking for." Marcus laughed. "You think you're some kind of tough guy?" Daniel stared at him. "No." He looked at his daughter's photograph. "I'm just a father." Marcus suddenly charged. Daniel moved. Not backward. Sideways. One step. Marcus's fist cut through empty air. The crowd gasped. Marcus turned. Daniel was already behind him. Marcus swung again. Daniel blocked his wrist. Not violently. Just enough. Marcus tried to pull free. He couldn't. Daniel's expression remained completely calm. "Stop." Marcus's face turned red. He attacked again. This time Daniel caught his arm, shifted his weight, and Marcus suddenly found himself on one knee. The garden went silent. Daniel released him immediately. "I told you." Marcus stared up at him. "How did you?" Daniel stepped back. "Walk away." But Marcus wasn't finished. He stood slowly. His humiliation had turned into rage. You think you're better than me? Daniel shook his head. No. Then fight me. Daniel looked around. Dozens of phones were recording. Then Daniel heard a familiar voice behind him. Daniel. It was Marcus's father, the billionaire CEO. Everyone expected him to defend his son. Instead, the CEO stared at Daniel with a strange expression. His face had gone completely pale. Where did you learn to move like that? Daniel didn't answer. The CEO stepped closer. Daniel. His voice dropped. Who were you? Daniel looked at him. And for the first time that evening, the billionaire looked genuinely afraid. Because he recognized something Daniel had hoped nobody would ever notice. The way he stood. The way he watched every exit. The way his eyes tracked every movement around him. That wasn't a mechanics training. It was military training. Elite military training. The CEO whispered, You were military. Daniel's jaw tightened. I served. Where? Daniel looked away. That's not important. But the CEO wasn't listening. He stared at Daniel's wrist. A tiny scar. Then his eyes widened. Wait. He whispered for words. Are you Commander Reed? Daniel froze. And suddenly the party wasn't laughing anymore. Nobody moved. Marcus slowly looked at his father. Dad. The CEO didn't answer. He was staring at Daniel. Commander Reed? Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Then he quietly said, That man doesn't exist anymore. The CEO shook his head. I thought you were dead. Daniel looked at him. Most people did. Marcus stepped forward. What the hell is going on? His father finally turned toward him. You just challenged one of the most highly decorated operators I've ever heard of. Marcus laughed nervously. No way. The CEO looked directly at his son. You have no idea who you were fighting. Daniel walked toward the table. He picked up his watch. I don't fight anymore. Marcus looked confused. Why? Daniel stopped. Because I have a daughter. The words were simple, but they carried something heavy. Years earlier, Daniel had been a different man. He had commanded a small Navy SEAL team during missions where one mistake could cost lives. He had learned to move before an enemy moved, to recognize danger before anyone else noticed it, to protect the person behind him even when it meant putting himself in front of a bullet. But one mission had changed everything. A teammate died saving Daniel. After that, Daniel walked away. He came home. He became a father. And he promised his little girl one thing. She would never have to wonder whether her dad was coming home. That promise mattered more to him than medals, more than money, more than reputation. Marcus looked at Daniel differently now, but his pride wouldn't let him apologize. So what? Marcus said. Daniel looked at him. So what? You beat me once. Daniel shook his head. No. He pointed toward the ground. You lost because you were angry. Marcus clenched his fists. Then teach me. Everyone looked surprised. Marcus continued. I want to know how you did that. Daniel shook his head. I don't teach people how to hurt others. I don't want to hurt anyone. Daniel studied him. You sure? Marcus looked down. Then he quietly said, I've spent my whole life trying to become someone my father would respect. His father's expression changed. Marcus continued. And every time I lose, I get angry. Daniel understood. Because beneath the arrogance was something familiar. A young man desperate to prove himself. Daniel walked closer. Then stopped trying to win. Marcus looked confused. What? Learn to control yourself first. Marcus nodded slowly. But before he could respond, a loud crash came from inside the mansion. Everyone turned. A window had shattered. Then the lights went out. The garden plunged into darkness. People screamed. Daniel immediately changed. The relaxed father disappeared. His eyes scanned the property. Everyone get down. The CEO stared at him. Daniel grabbed Marcus and pulled him behind a stone wall. Stay here. What about my father? I'll get him. Daniel moved toward the house. Someone shouted from inside. Then another crash. Daniel entered through the broken window. He moved through the dark hallway without making a sound. He knew exactly where the cameras were. Exactly where the exits were. Exactly how a trained man would move. He found the CEO near the study. Come with me. What is happening? Someone broke in. Daniel looked down. A black glove lay on the floor. He picked it up. Then he noticed something. The intruder wasn't after money. The expensive artwork was untouched. The safe was untouched. The target was a small black briefcase on the CEO's desk. Daniel grabbed it. Then a shadow appeared behind him. Daniel turned. The attacker lunged. Daniel blocked the first strike. Then the second. The fight lasted only seconds. Daniel disarmed him and forced him to the ground. When the police arrived, the entire party was silent. Marcus stood outside. He watched Daniel walk out of the mansion. No celebration. No bragging. Nothing. Just the same quiet man who had arrived earlier. Marcus walked toward him. Daniel. Daniel turned. Marcus hesitated. Then he said, "I'm sorry." Daniel nodded. "Good." Marcus looked surprised. "That's it." Daniel smiled slightly. "What else do you want?" Marcus laughed. For the first time that night, there was no arrogance in his voice. "I want to learn." Daniel looked at him. "Then come to my garage tomorrow morning." Marcus smiled. "Seriously? 6 a.m.? Marcus's smile disappeared. 6. Daniel nodded. "First lesson." "What is it?" Daniel walked toward his truck. "Discipline." Marcus watched him leave. The CEO came to stand beside his son. "You have no idea how lucky you are." Marcus looked at his father. "Why?" His father watched Daniel's truck disappear down the driveway. "Because that man could have destroyed you tonight." Marcus swallowed. "But he didn't." "No." The CEO smiled. "He chose to teach you instead." The next morning, at exactly 6 o'clock, Marcus arrived at Daniel's garage. Daniel was already there. No luxury car. No expensive clothes. Just work boots, an old truck, and a coffee in his hand. Marcus walked inside. "So, what do we do?" Daniel handed him a broom. Marcus stared at it. "A broom?" Daniel nodded. "Clean the garage." Marcus frowned. "You said you'd teach me." "I am." "How?" Daniel smiled. "Before you learn how to fight." He pointed at the dirty floor. "You learn how to serve." Marcus looked at the broom, then at Daniel, and slowly smiled, because for the first time in his life he wasn't learning how to defeat someone. He was learning how to become someone worth respecting. And the single dad everyone had laughed at the night before? He wasn't trying to prove he was a hero. He had already proven it years ago. He just never needed anyone to know.